All right, we are live.
Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, mindset time. And damn it, before we go into it, I just want to obviously talk about the fact that the slaughterhouse of failure is not in our destiny. And we will persevere until we succeed. Today, we're going to talk about the fourth principle, and I have just actually lost it. So, Dan, if you want to begin.
Sure. I will start with Lawrence's usual mantra: the slaughterhouse of failure is not in our destiny. We will persist until we succeed. So yeah, we're down to the fourth discipline of execution, and we've talked in the last couple of weeks about the first discipline, which is to focus on that wildly important goal. The second, hold on one second, I got people in the waiting room. The second discipline, which is to act on the lead measures to meet your lag measure or your wildly important goal. The third one is keep a compelling scorecard, and we talked about the utilizing the whiteboard last week and the wellness scorecard and the practices. And this week we're talking about creating a cadence of accountability. So this is really where we get down to the nuts and the bolts of this whole system. The first three disciplines are really set up to put into action in this fourth discipline. And so the fourth discipline is to create this cadence of accountability. And really it's all about setting up a frequently recurring cycle of accounting for past performance, for planning to move the score forward, and discipline 4 is where this execution actually happens. That's going to get us to our WIG or to our lag measure. So until you apply this fourth discipline, you're not really even in the game. You've just done that planning for how you're going to get there and how you're going to track it, right? And this accountability phase, or this accountability discipline, is about establishing a weekly rhythm for accountability within your team, within yourself and your business, to really drive progress toward this wildly important goal. And so, I equate this discipline to, us doing a Ruby call on a weekly basis with our teams, right? Where we're asking them for what they're doing to move that ball forward over the goal line, and how they're going to do that. What are they going to focus on to get to their WIG, right? And that's what we should be talking about in these Ruby calls. And so there's really three parts to an agenda for this accountability call, this weekly accountability call, or in our case, the Ruby call. That first one is, are you committed to making three-way calls? Are you committed to contacting X amount of customers? What are you going to do to move that ball forward? Right? Those are the things that we talk about on a regular basis. And so, what can we do in a physician practice to move that ball forward? What does that ultimate accountability look like? It's reporting on commitments that we've made, both to ourselves, to our teams, and the commitments that our team members have made. And so, you need to commit to something. And then in the second part for the agenda for these WIG calls, or these WIG sessions, or Ruby calls, whatever you want to call them, is, how are you going to learn from your successes and failures? Review that scoreboard, review your wildly important goals and the things that you're focusing on, review that whiteboard and see whether or not you're still on track to meet your WIG, right? And then the third is to clear the path and make new commitments. So those are the three things that you want to focus on these Ruby calls or these WIG sessions. The third one is clearing that path. You meet with a member of your team, or a number of members of your team, and talk about how you're going to improve your performance, and you'll come up with at least 3 ideas for helping to improve, or what are those ideas that you're going to focus on to get you to your WIG.
So the whole point is eventually to act on the information and results. So as an example, if we look at a a lag, and then we see where we're going to analyze that. Giving an example, my mission this week was to prepare the staff for 2 clinics. So I was successful in helping the first clinic in understanding smooth operation and flow, thanks to an excellent office manager who has experience and an open attitude of making things happen. She saw the bigger pictures, was able to guide the other members of her staff. So in this case, it was the office manager that was calling the shots. Unfortunately, the second clinic was not successful for 2 reasons. First of all, I was overconfident because in the first one, it all went so well, and I was kind of bolshy about it. And I went into the second place to the second clinic. And it turns out that the office manager had absolutely no executive powers. The doctor was holding everything to his chest. He was totally in control, didn't trust anybody. So there were 2 completely opposite aspects to the same type of business. Both of them happened to be optometrists. So one of them was relying entirely on his office manager. The other one was doing it entirely himself. So this is where we've got the lesson. So the lesson was that, first of all, we've got to understand the mindset of each person that we're talking to, each group we're talking to. People are all different. They act differently. To clearly understand the job description, because if there is a job description, which there should be, then is it being followed? If not, why? And where we have a good relationship between, for example, the doctor and his office manager, and then we find out that's an asset for the company. On the case where the doctor had no trust in his office manager, he is the stumbling block. He is slowing the business. So here we look at a situation, we take an X-ray of that situation, and we see how can we help make it work. So on the one hand, we have the guy who's holding everything to his chest, and we say, look, you're actually a problem because you're doing everything yourself, and you're doing it well, but you're only doing a part of what you could be doing as a business. You've got a bunch of employees, you've got a bunch of staff. So let's find the quality of those people. Let's find what's really good in each one of them. And on the other one, so on the other clinic, where the office is going really well, then celebrate that and show the doctor that he's doing a really good job, the staff's doing a good job, and that will progress. So I'm saying the lag measure is understanding where the problem is and then trying to analyze it and to see how point by point we can actually fix this.
Oh,
sorry, Dan, I thought you were talking to me.
that's okay. No, I wasn't talking. That was Michael. I really believe Michael was yelling at his dog, telling his dog to be quiet. So
Oh, sorry, I was distracted from that. Okay.
So
yeah, so communication is absolutely essential. Communication, understanding in this case, and understanding the role of everybody and the role of each job description. And then our job is to analyze that and try and highlight and make successful the parts which are that are a challenge, and to celebrate the parts that are really successful.
Yeah, part of the problem in a lot of these clinics that we're introducing the scanner into is that most of the employees don't know what their goals are. And I read an interesting statistic the other day that only 15% of employees have any idea what the company's goals are. I mean, that's a staggering statistic. So, that leads even more credence to what we're talking about here, that we need to have that wildly important goal. But not only do we have to have that wildly important goal, but we need to know that everybody knows what that goal is, right? And so these weekly meetings are important for not only defining what those goals are, but defining who is going to be responsible for what, where does the accountability lie, and then making new commitments moving forward, and learning from those successes and those failures. So the one or two most important things, what are those one or two most important things that I can do this week to impact those lead measures? That's where this accountability piece comes in. And these WIG meetings or these WIG sessions are Ruby calls. They should be moving at a fast pace. They shouldn't be more than 20 or 30 minutes. You shouldn't have more than 4 or 5 people involved. It gives what it does also is it gives the team a chance to process what they've learned, what they're focusing on, and whether they're focusing on the correct things, right? And one of the things that most important things you should be asking yourself and your team members is, what can I do this week to clear the path for success, for meeting that wildly important goal? And what are those 1 or 2 things? I know I keep focusing on this 1 or 2 thing idea, but it's, if you have too many things on your plate, then you've got too many distractions, and you can only really focus on 1 or 2 things. That's just how our brains work. I always used to pride myself on being able to multitask, and one of the things that I've really been working on in the last couple of years is focusing on those 1 or 2 things, right? Because 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities. So you really need to be understanding whether you're focusing on the right things to get you where you want to be, and then helping your team understand where you want to be and where they want to be, and combining those goals and those forces, those commitments, that accountability to make sure that you're reaching that goal. So, each commitment should really be meeting 2 standards. The first commitment must represent a specific deliverable. Like, are you going to do 3 three-way calls a day? Are you going to reach out to 20 people a week? What is that specific deliverable? And that's tied into your commitment. The second thing that you should be asking, or that standard that it should meet, is that the commitment must influence the lead measures, right? Because those are the 2 things that are going to get you to your lag. And so what you all ultimately want to do is focus on each member of your team and how they're going to take personal ownership of the commitments that they've made. So, that's one of the things that Lawrence and I and Michael and I have been talking about with our team, is that we're not doing a good job of getting specific commitments and then making people accountable for that on a weekly basis. And if we're not doing those things, then we're not going to be moving forward, because people need to be held accountable for those commitments that they make, not only to themselves, but to the organization and our team. And when you do that in a public format, you have some people that are making commitments and being accountable and meeting those commitments. And then you have some people that aren't. And those people that aren't start to psychologically, get on board, because they don't want to be the ones that are left out and the ones that aren't, making those commitments and then being held accountable for them. So the most important thing with these WIGs, or these accountability sessions, is that the session is not organizational, it's personal.
Yes.
And instead of accountability to a broad outcome that you can't influence, it's accountability to a weekly commitment you've made to yourself or within your team, and that you have the power to keep.
Totally. In fact, when you talk about the 1 or 2 things, 100%. And getting back to my little 2 clinics as an example, on the one side, you've got the doctor who's got a good manager and who's got a clinic that's running very well. But then that doctor may take that manager for granted. And we've got to make him aware, or her aware, that he's got to pay attention to what's going well, because the way things happen, the office manager, he or she may suddenly find another job. And then he's in big trouble, because he's totally dependent on an efficient office manager. And he hasn't, he's just letting her do everything or him do everything. And he's kind of abnegating his own involvement. And it's important to make him realize or her realize that, first of all, there's a danger always that somebody's not going to be there all the time. They may find another job, they get married, they go and live somewhere else or whatever. So they have to, one of the focuses is to say, look, you've got a good job going here, but watch out. You've got to spend more time with celebrating and being part of and understanding the rest of the stuff. Because right now, your office manager is the catalyst and she's conducting everything so well, but you've got to be there. And on the other side, where the doctor's doing it all himself, you're saying, okay, well, look, you are the friction point. You're not letting your office manager, who you employed to help you, do anything. So the fact is now there are two things that have got to happen. We've got to get the office manager to be able to show her capabilities, be more proactive, act in a way which will encourage the doctor to understand that he has an asset that he's not using, and to be able to communicate both ways. One of them is to communicate, the office manager who's not being given any responsibility, to communicate better and to be proactive, and to, even though she's not being recognized now, but we got to make that doctor understand that he should pay attention to that and communicate, and to have a bi-monthly meeting where communication is. So I'm just using two examples, practical examples of something where we can look at a problem, analyze it, and see how we can help. You might say, well, we're interfering with the doctor's practice. Well, guess what? People pay for consultants. In some ways, we are observers, and if we can add 10 cents which is constructive, I think that's appreciated. I've always had appreciation. I've been appreciated for making relevant comments, not just criticize something, say that's wrong. No, there's possibly this way that might show a better result. And I think this is important. And it's about communication, and it's about the accountability, where we can highlight where it's lacking and how we can point that out and help.
Exactly. So I just want to make everybody aware, I did post an 80/20 activity analyzer that I found online into the chat. And I think this will be a good tool for everybody to kind of look at, what your WIG is, what your barriers are to achieving your goals, how you're going to achieve them, and then ultimately identifying activities that are going to help you meet your goal. So take a look at that, download it. But I also want to say that, there's some risk. Paige, thank you very much for your comment in the chat that you sent me. But there is some risk in calling people out on your team, because some people may get turned off on that. They may be shy. They may be, they don't want to look bad in front of their peers, whatever it may be. So you do need to be careful in how you do this during these WIG sessions. But from a psychological standpoint, when some members of your team see that their peers are consistently following through on the commitments that they've made, they learn that the other people learn that the people that they work with can be trusted to do what they say they're going to do. So it's not only about calling people out, but it's also creating an atmosphere of trust where everyone on the team knows that when somebody says they're going to do something, they do it. And when this happens, you're going to see performance improve dramatically, because everybody knows that everybody else on the team that is making commitments are going to do what they say they're going to do and are going to be held accountable. So I think that's important to differentiate, what the ultimate goal of having this accountability is. It's not just about, calling somebody out and making them feel bad, or even if that's not your intention, they may feel that way. So you have to do it in a way that's tolerated by the team members, right? And everybody's different. Some people are going to wrap their arms around this and embrace it. Other people are going to be a little bit intimidated by it. But, being intimidated by it is just because you haven't got out of your comfort zone, right? You're uncomfortable in that situation. So we just need to coach those people to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So ultimately, these 40X is what Covey calls them, these 4 disciplines of execution. It doesn't produce results from the exercise of authority, but from the fundamental desire of everybody, all the team members, to feel significant and to do work that matters ultimately to win as a team. And so that's the culture that we're trying to create on our team, is that everybody feels accountable, everybody feels the same commitment level to what we're doing, and we work very well as a team to help everybody succeed and to win. And when everybody has that feeling on your team that your main goal is to see them win, and that you're making a commitment to them, they're going to, in return, make that commitment back to you. And so what I tell people when we're first getting started out, or they decide to join the team, I tell them, look, we will work at your pace. If you want to walk, we'll walk. If you want to run, we'll run. If you want to sprint, we'll sprint. You tell me, but I am only going to give you the same amount of energy back that you're showing me. If you're calling me once a week and asking me questions, and you're not doing any 3-way calls, and you're not reaching out to prospects, and you're not, working through your network, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with you, because 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities, right? So we don't want to spend a lot of our time focusing on somebody who's not doing a lot of work, because it's inefficient, right? And so we need to figure out those 20% of activities that are actually going to lead to that 80% of the results.
Well,
right.
Dan, you said a couple of things that I think, obviously a lot of things, but a few things that stand out to me. You said coach, and I look at this as a sports team. We are the coaches, and we've got to show leadership. And some people's feelings may be hurt, but it's a team, and everybody is on the same team, rowing and with hopefully the same force in the same direction. And it's up to us to call out in a way which could be sympathetic, or in a way which could be more not aggressive, but assertive, in getting everybody to feel significant, win as a team, and be accountable, because they got to be accountable to each other. And I think it's important that we assert our own leadership on our team and say, listen, you're doing a good job, but you're spinning your wheels because I think you could do better by doing this little detail, 1 or 2 points that we can point out. But we've not got to be, in my opinion, shy to be absolutely frank and honest to make this thing happen. Because if we pussyfoot around and we're too politically correct, let's say, to say, well, then it's our team, it's their team, it's a team. Everybody's got to, pull their weight and show some results, and we can help with that.
Yep. So good points, Lawrence. I think we all really need to master these 4 disciplines. If you haven't read the book, take the time to read it. Paige brought it to my attention that the document that I put into the chat, not everybody can see it. So I'll put that on the HCA Facebook page so that everybody has access to it. But, if you don't really understand these 4 disciplines and how you can incorporate them into your business and your team and your physician practices, you really need to take a deep dive into this. There's lots of great information in the book. And if you have any issues understanding some of the material, feel free to reach out to one of us who has a pretty good understanding of how it works, because we talked about this week on our team. We're going to be focusing on these disciplines on our team specifically, and we're going to be integrating these disciplines. And if there's no accountability, if there's no commitments, if people aren't giving back the same energy that we're giving back, they're not going to be on the train, right? We've got a train, and it's moving forward, and it's going to move forward whether you're on it or not. You just need to decide whether you want to be on the train. And if you don't, that's fine. You'll figure out something else that you want to do. But we have a focus, we have the discipline, we have the we've made the commitments, we have the accountability, and we want everybody on our team to have that as well. So
good, Dan. Thank you. And we're at 59. Does anybody have any comment? Anybody want to say anything or add or comment about anything? Paige?
This is just like being in a college class. You guys are professors at this point. I take some notes, and my gosh, my fingers are worn out. But I'm halfway through the book. When I think I told Dan when I first got the book, I started to read it and I put it down. It just didn't resonate. And then I started seeing how it seems like most of what Stephen's doing derives from that book. And I figured I better get on this train myself. And so I'm working with it right now. And I'm just very happy that you guys decided to do full Friday sessions on this. And so thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, if this system has worked in multi-billion-dollar companies all over the world, there's no reason why it can't work for us. We just need to come up with a strategy and integrate this into what we're doing. Everything's a little bit different, but the concepts are the same. We just need to figure out how these concepts fit into what we are doing and how we can fit it into our teams. So thanks for those comments, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan, I think, thank you for everything that you said, and accountability, and also being careful of how you, I guess, do approach some people, because, they're investing their time and their money and their energy into their own company. So, as we continue to grow and we continue to bring on all different walks of life and all different experiences, from no sales to expert sales, there's just a whole realm of great people that are joining the company and the vision. And I think that the vision continues and should continue to kind of evolve to not change what has been working, but to kind of tweak sometimes, and to just kind of streamline and continue to look at different approaches in the way that, we all have different styles. And it's not to say that one style is better than the other, because it's not. It is whatever works, for you. And it doesn't look like what your neighbor does. And that's great. That there's a reason for that, right? People buy from people they like, and they may not like you, but they might like your neighbor. And so it's just a cycle of, I think we have to listen to a lot of the ideas and a lot of the different things that everybody brings to the table, and not just one single straight line stream.
No, I agree. We're all different individuals. We all have our own style, but I think we can use the strategies and the concepts and the materials that we have. We'll just all use them a little bit differently to get to the same place.
Yeah.
I think that's the real challenge of our program. And it's interesting to hear when Lawrence will talk about, don't be afraid, you need to push when you need to push. And so what is in the back of my mind with all that is, if you're applying this in a corporate structure, corporate or non-corporate, it's challenging. But in a corporate structure, it can very easily be my way or the highway, because you work as an employee. Our entire business is working with volunteers. These are people who got into this because they want to run their own business. They want to create their own success. And that's what really puts the challenge on us to elevate our leadership skills so that we don't alienate them, but yet we're still effective in helping them move themselves forward. It's quite a challenge.
actually, Jim, I agree with about 100% about something, that as volunteer army, some people are shy, some people are extrovert, but the person that's shy doesn't mean we can't find the diamond in that person. And you know, the tendency historically in old school business was, oh, that guy's not suited for this position. Whereas today we say, well, why don't we find out really what makes him tick? And we spend that little extra time to find what is the button that we can push that will make that person a very great asset for our business. And I think we need to spend the time with this volunteer army, because somebody wants to do something, he doesn't want to do it, so he's fumbling and he looks there, he's not sure and so on, and we kind of discard that. He's not going to go anywhere. No, on the contrary, as soon as he pushed that button, maybe we can get him to explode. Oh, wow.
That's Lawrence, I'd comment on what you just said, and it comes back to what Riley said. Everyone is different, but you know, we all learn differently. There are auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners, but there are fundamental principles, and we need to teach those principles from different angles to meet the different personality types that Riley had mentioned. And that's part of the leadership of this. It is a volunteer army, but it goes all the way back to the beginning of the call when you're talking about delegating authority. We teach others how to do this and delegate that authority. That's what a true leader does.
I agree with that, Michael, for sure. And there's, you know, just like we talk about personalities with people, every practice that we integrate into has its own personality as well. So, you know, from my perspective, there's two personalities of the clinic. There's the ones that are physician driven, and there's the ones that are employee driven, right? And so, you know, even though we have the strategies to integrate this, I think we need strategies that integrate into those two different types of practices. And, you know, how do we get those two different types of practices to be successful? Because I think the process is going to be a little bit different for each, but we can still utilize these 4 disciplines to help coach them. And so, you know, I don't even, you know, quite honestly, I use the term leadership, but I've been trying not to, because I don't really like the term leader. I think coach is a better terminology to use, because leadership has a bunch of bad connotations, and a lot of people think that leaders or leadership is telling people what to do, and it's not. Coaching's a little bit different. Coaching is taking them, talking to them, figuring out what their personality is, what the practice personality is, and then helping them to figure out what they need to do and what we need to do to be successful. So, you know, from my perspective, I'm trying to use coaching a lot more than leadership, because I think coaching has a much better connotation to it. You know, just as we say, you know, upline and downline and things like that in our business, I think it's better to just say team, you know, rather than make people feel, you know, striated or not, you know, the same as everybody else. We want to be everybody feel inclusive. But yeah, I think there's some things that we need to work on for sure. We have a great foundation, but I think there's things that we can ultimately do utilizing these 4 disciplines to help us be successful, help our practices be successful. You know, just like I think, you know, one of the things that I think that we really need to work on, and this, I've been saying this since I joined the company, is that we really need to work on a way to get people up and moving quicker once they decide to join us. You know, what can we do to get them to be successful quicker, to get into those daily activities, to focus on those 1 or 2 things that they need to do to be successful, and start seeing some return on their investment quicker, which is only going to increase their enthusiasm for what we're doing, right? You know, Lawrence and I talked about this at length yesterday for about an hour when I was driving. And, you know, we both kind of agreed on that. And so I think we need to really focus on how we're getting these scanners into the right hands. And once we have them in the right hands, how do we get them to be successful quicker? There's some people that are going to do it on their own. And then there's other people that maybe aren't as entrepreneurial, but they see the vision of what we're doing, and they're going to need their handheld a little bit more. So what can we do to get these up and being productive? And productive is going to be different for everybody. Is productive going to be going out and doing Get Healthy USA events for one person? Productive for another person is getting a scanner placed in a clinic for another person, right? We have different personalities, and different personalities are going to want to engage in different activities in the business. So part of that is getting them to commit on some level to what those activities are that they're comfortable doing, and then being held accountable to those commitments that they've made.
Hey, Dan, may I make a quick point?
Yes.
Lawrence talked earlier about this whole question of basically being a consultant. And I think as I'm listening to all this, there's a potential glaring gap that hits me. And it's this: we on this call, because of our backgrounds, because of where we've come from, and because in many cases of the nurturing that we've gone through right here in this organization, are far more aware of business than the vast majority of doctors who are not particularly businessmen. They may be very good doctors, they may run a successful practice within the limited purview of what they do, but they are not businessmen who understand necessarily mindset, goals, wigs, things like that. And so there has to be a certain level of translation. When you have a successful communication, it depends on the transmitter transmitting successfully and succinctly and well and clearly, and the receiver actually catching what you send. So I think we need to kind of think about that a little bit. How do we get a physician or a physician's practice up to speed on being a businessman? I mean, in the example that you quoted a little earlier, I had the situation where I had a physician who loved the scanner, took the scanner on, and he very carefully put it away where nobody else could touch it in his practice. Well, guess how successful that was? And so there's a little bit of business training that needs to go into circumstances like that. Just think it's something to think about.
It's coaching.
I just want to thank you, Martin. I just want to maybe challenge everybody on this call to think about two or three things, one or two things that we can do to help expedite the success of the people that we recruit. And then let's hear your comments. Everybody, we've got a bunch of people that all have different experiences. Well, let's hear it. What can we, one or two things that you have that you believe can help expedite the success of a new person in the business? Is that fair? Is that something reasonable?
Absolutely, Lawrence. And it comes back to understanding it. To Martin's point, physicians tend to be a little bit more artistic than business driven. A good thing in most cases, patients, but we have to ask questions. It comes back to asking questions and developing that relationship and understand who you're speaking to and how to best inform them of what we have and the methodology of putting it in place.
That's a great point.
I agree with that. And I think, I've talked a lot about on our team about, when we're doing these recruiting calls or when we're talking to physicians, we need to stop. I think there's a time and a place for telling people about what we have ad nauseum, but there's also a time and a place for listening to the information that they need to make a decision to move forward. Right. And so I think we all need to spend a little bit more time listening, and rather than just, going through our 30-minute presentation and, willy-nilly and do it the same time, same thing every single time, because we're, robots just kind of going through the same presentation, hitting the same points every single time. I think we need to start listening to who we're recruiting and what they need to know to make that decision to move forward. Right. Some people it's going to be the money, some people it's going to be the science, some people it's going to be the technology. But I think we need to start letting them lead the conversation. And I think when we do that, as long as they've watched the business briefing, they already have a pretty good understanding of what we're doing. They just need some questions answered. Right. And sometimes going through that presentation for 30 minutes is a little bit too much. And people are like, okay, well, I already know all this from the 30-minute business briefing. this is what I really want to know, these 4 or 5 things, answer those questions, and then be quiet. Let them come to you with what they need. And then, along the lines of practices, we talk about success, or we talk about the success of our personal business, and that's going to be different for everybody, right? My level of success that I want to achieve may be higher than somebody else's on the team, right? So I think we need to be understanding of what that level of success looks like for the individual. Somebody else's level of success may not be the same level of success that I want to achieve or that I want them to achieve, right? And that goes for clinics. Maybe they're happy putting 5 people a week on product, and that's a success to them because they're helping 5 people that they weren't helping before. For somebody else, it might be 40 people a week. We need to know what that success looks like for them, and we need to help them build on that success to get them ultimately where they can be, that they didn't think that they could be, and the level of achieving the level of success that maybe they didn't think that they could achieve, right? So it's for some people, they're going to want to ultimately reach that highest level of success. Other people are going to want to start slow, and our job is to coach them in what they're doing and how they can be even more successful in what they're doing.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
I've got an example for you of just in the last 2 days. I've spoken to 2 different women in 2 very different situations. Both of them have a lot of talent. And, but I'm sitting there thinking, okay, look, first, I drove for 45 minutes to go sit with one of them for an hour and a half. And what I wanted to do was truly understand her and what her challenges were so that I could try to help come up and formulate a business, because this business can be A to Z in a way. And the other woman had a totally different situation. And in one case, I've pretty much ascertained I'm going to go back to her now and help her understand how we can build a program that will help her make enough money to pay her mortgage payment, put it in real terms. The other one, she doesn't want that. She wants to know how she can make $300,000 a year by year 3. So these are 2 different people. They have 2 different levels of pain. And each one of them could be highly successful with this business. But as the person who's recruiting, it's truly incumbent upon me to spend the time with them so that I can help them channel their activities for their success, not mine.
Actually,
Exactly.
that's why I was using these 2 examples of these clinics when I started talking about 2 different mindsets and different situations. But here's something that I think we've all got some scanners in our groups. I think in some time, we've got to take off a little bit of time from recruiting and going back to each one of the scanners we've got and have an x-ray of where they are, what they're doing, why they're only doing this compared to what they could be doing, if they're open to listening. And it's up to us to make sure they are open to listening if we communicate right. But I think we should revisit the people that we've already recruited and have scanners and that think they're doing fine if they're doing 3,000 points a month. I think that's kind of pathetic if you've got a clinic. But it's up to us to go and revisit that and in a nice way try and see how we can bring out 1 or 2 points to make it really go forwards.
And I have a great example as well, Jim, with an actual clinic. She, it's an optometry practice, and she's had the scanner for maybe 3 months, but they've got some other things going on. They're doing some renovations. They're bringing other things into the practice. So they haven't been as busy or seeing as many patients as they normally are, but they've got 50 or 60 patients on product and they're happy. Every time I talk to them, they're happy. For them, this is success, and they're starting to hear success stories come back from their patients, right? So would I like for them to have 100 people on product? Yes. But how do I get them to focus on what they're doing to get them there, right? If they're happy where they're at, that's fantastic. But is there something that I can do to help them be more successful and focus on a few things? I talked to them yesterday and they're ecstatic with where they're at. And so we talked about, hey, I know you said that you wanted to introduce this to some of your colleagues. Here's how we do that. because they said, we're not comfortable doing that. We don't even know where to do, get started doing something like that. So I just explained to them how easy it is. They've been to the fly-in, just explain to them that you went out to Utah, you saw what the company has. You just wanted to share that with them because you're excited and you're getting testimonials back from your patients that it's helping them. And, it's something that they can integrate into their practice as well. And then ask them to get on a 3-way call. It's that simple, right? And so, it's coaching them how they can be successful with this program, because they want to not only do it with their patients in their practice, but they also want to build a business out of it. And it's helping them see how they can do that and how they can increase their success in what they're doing with our program.
Yeah.
Coaching, communication. Agreed.
All right. Any additional questions? We've run about 20 minutes past, which has me really excited and thankful that you've all stayed on here, because it means that what we're talking about is relevant. So any other questions? All right, everybody. Lawrence, any last shots over the bow?
No, sir. Just thank you as usual, and everybody for participating and comments and so on. And I think we're at such exciting times right now, and we have all the tools, and we've just got to do it. That's all. Just do it. We've got that Nike thing, man. That we got to just bloody well do it. That's all.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for spending time with us here this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Bring some friends.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks
you,
very
Dave.
much.
All right. See you.
Very
Have
useful
a
call.
great weekend, everybody.
Yeah.